How to build mental resilience after setbacks. Recover stronger, not bitter. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It truly helps the channel grow and continue to create contents like this. Setbacks have a special kind of weight. They don't just slow you down, they mess with your identity. One day you're moving forward, you feel momentum, you feel capable, and then something happens. Failure, rejection, injury, a mistake, a loss, and suddenly your mind starts asking uncomfortable questions. What does this mean about me? Am I falling behind? Did I waste time? Am I not cut out for this? That's the part most people don't talk about. The practical setback is one thing. The mental aftermath is the real fight. Mental resilience after setbacks isn't about pretending it didn't hurt. It's not about forced positivity. It's about being able to take a hit, seal the impact, and still keep your direction. It's the ability to carry disappointment without letting it become destiny. A lot of people think resilience is a personality trait, like some people are just strong. But resilience is largely a set of skills: how you interpret what happened, how you regulate the emotional wave, how you rebuild confidence through action, and how you create meaning out of the setback instead of just scars. So the first move after a setback is to separate pain from story. Pain is real. Disappointment is real. Grief is real. But the story you tell yourself on top of it can either help you recover or trap you in the setback indefinitely. The most common trap story is, "This proves something is wrong with me." That story turns one event into an identity. That's where people break. They don't break from the setback itself. They break from what they decide it means. Resilient people still feel the pain. They just don't let it define them. So step one is allowing the emotion without making it your whole narrative. You don't rush to fix it. You let yourself feel the loss, because if you don't, it comes out sideways as bitterness, avoidance, or numbness. You acknowledge, "This sucks. I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. I'm embarrassed. I'm scared." Naming it matters. When you name what you feel, you stop fighting it. And fighting emotions makes them stronger. Acceptance isn't weakness. It's emotional accuracy. Now, the next move is regulating the body. Setbacks trigger a threat response. Your nervous system gets activated. You get tension, rumination, tight chest, restless energy. If you stay stuck in that state, your mind will keep producing dark interpretations. So you do something simple and physical. Walk, move, breathe, sleep, eat. This sounds obvious, but it's not optional. You cannot rebuild mental resilience on a dysregulated nervous system. When you're depleted, every thought becomes heavier. When you're regulated, your mind becomes more flexible. Flexibility is the secret ingredient of resilience, the ability to hold multiple truths at once. Yes, this happened. Yes, it hurts. And also, I'm not done. After you regulate, you move into evaluation. And this part is where most people either grow or get stuck. When you evaluate a setback, you can do it in two ways: as a courtroom or as a lab. In a courtroom, you're trying to assign blame. You're prosecuting yourself. You're replaying what you did wrong, what you should have done, what you failed to foresee. Courtroom thinking creates shame. Shame creates paralysis. In a lab, you're looking for information. What happened? Why did it happen? What can I learn? What can I change next time? Lab thinking creates clarity. Clarity creates action. Resilience is basically lab thinking under emotional pressure. So ask yourself lab questions. What was under my control? What wasn't? What did I do well even in the loss? What would I do differently with the same situation? What is the smallest adjustment that would improve the outcome? Notice the tone. It's not self-attack. It's curiosity. Now here's a big one. Confidence after setbacks isn't rebuilt through affirmations. It's rebuilt through evidence. You don't talk yourself back into confidence. You act yourself back into it. That means you need a comeback plan, not a grand comeback plan, a small one. Something you can do today or tomorrow that proves you're still in the game. The worst thing after a setback is dropping into total inactivity because your mind interprets inactivity as confirmation that you're finished. Action is the antidote to hopelessness, so you set a tiny recovery goal. One phone call, one page, one workout, one application, one practice session, one uncomfortable step forward. It doesn't have to fix everything. It has to restore movement. Movement changes identity. When you act, even small, you start shifting the story from "I'm stuck" to "I'm rebuilding." Now, resilience also requires you to be honest about what you lost. Sometimes a setback is a simple failure. Sometimes it's a real loss: time, money, opportunity, health, trust. You don't disrespect that by rushing past it. You let it matter. You allow yourself to grieve the gap between what you wanted and what happened. But here's the key. You grieve without surrendering. Grief is not quitting. Grief is processing. Quitting is collapsing the future. A resilient mindset says, I can be sad and still continue. I can be disappointed and still keep going. I can be embarrassed and still show up again. That combination is powerful because most people think they have to feel confident to act. Resilient people act while they feel shaken. Another piece is reframing time. After setbacks, people often think, I'm behind. That thought is poison. Behind compared to what? Compared to an imaginary timeline? Compared to other people's highlight reels? Behind compared to who you thought you'd be. The behind narrative creates panic. Panic creates poor decisions. Instead, focus on direction. Am I moving the right way, even slowly? Direction matters more than speed after setbacks. Setbacks also test your relationship with perfection. If you believe your value comes from never failing, setbacks feel like identity death. But if you see failure as part of growth, setbacks become painful but not fatal. This is why building resilience requires building a new definition of success. Success is not never fall. Success is return. The return is everything. Now let's talk about rebuilding momentum. After a setback, you usually have two competing forces inside you. One is the part that wants to hide. The other is the part that wants to prove something. Both can be dangerous. Hiding keeps you stuck. Overproving can make you reckless. Resilience is balanced comeback energy. You don't disappear, and you don't sprint blindly. You rebuild steadily. A good comeback plan has 3 layers: stabilize, rebuild, expand. Stabilize means you take care of basics and stop the bleeding. You regain sleep. You simplify your responsibilities. You reduce emotional chaos. You create a small daily structure so your life isn't free fall. Rebuild means you start doing the work again, but at a sustainable pace. You focus on fundamentals. You train the basics. You rebuild confidence through repetition. Expand means once you have stability and consistency, you gradually raise the challenge level again. You don't jump straight back to full intensity. You ramp up. Most people try to skip stabilization and rebuilding and go straight to expansion. They try to make up for lost time. That usually leads to another crash. Resilience is patience with purpose. Now, another thing that matters after setbacks is who you talk to. In a vulnerable state, input matters. Some people amplify fear. Some people minimize your pain. Some people make it about them. You need people who can hold reality with you. People who can acknowledge it was hard and still remind you that you're capable. If you don't have that, you can be that person for yourself. That's what self-resilience is. It's being able to speak to yourself with grounded strength. Not hype, not shame, grounded strength. Something like, this hurts, but I'm not helpless. I can take one step. That kind of self-talk is oxygen. One of the hardest parts after a setback is what happens when the noise finally quiets down. The adrenaline fades. The immediate crisis passes. And you're left alone with your thoughts. That's usually when the replay starts. The mind goes back to the moment over and over, scanning for what you missed, what you should have said, where it went wrong. This replay can feel productive, like you're figuring it out, but most of the time it's just rumination wearing a disguise. Rumination feels active, but it's actually stuck energy. Mental resilience means knowing when reflection turns into self-punishment. Reflection has an endpoint. Rumination loops. A simple way to tell the difference is this. Reflection leads to a decision or an insight. Rumination just makes you feel worse without changing anything. So you give reflection a container. You decide, I'm going to think about this for 20 minutes. You write down what you learned, what you'll change, and what you'll let go of. And then you stop. When the mind tries to pull you back into the loop later, You remind yourself, I've already done the work. That boundary protects your energy. Another major obstacle after setbacks is fear of trying again. This fear is subtle. It doesn't always say, I'm scared. Sometimes it says, I'll wait until I'm ready, or I need to think more, or now's not the right time. But underneath, it's the same fear. What if it happens again? Resilience doesn't mean fear disappears. It means fear stops making decisions for you. The way through fear is not confidence, it's controlled exposure. You re-enter the arena gradually. You don't recreate the exact same high-stakes situation right away. You lower the stakes and rebuild trust with yourself. If you failed publicly, you practice privately. If you were rejected, you apply again somewhere else. If you got hurt, you train carefully. Each exposure rewires your nervous system. It learns that trying again is survivable. And here's something important. You don't need to fully believe in yourself to act. Belief often follows action, not the other way around. Waiting to feel confident keeps people frozen. Acting while uncertain builds confidence. Another mental habit that strengthens resilience is separating outcome from effort. After setbacks, people often evaluate themselves solely based on results. It didn't work, so I failed. But outcomes are influenced by variables outside your control. Effort, preparation, and integrity are not. So resilient people ask different questions. Did I show up honestly? Did I give real effort? Did I learn something useful? Did I act in alignment with my values? If the answer is yes, the setback hurts less because your identity isn't entirely tied to the outcome. This doesn't mean you excuse poor performance. It means you judge yourself fairly. Another key shift is learning to tolerate uncertainty. Setbacks often shatter the illusion of certainty. You thought you knew how things would go, and now you don't. That can feel destabilizing. The mind wants guarantees. It wants safety. But resilience grows when you accept that uncertainty is part of forward movement. No meaningful path comes with guarantees. If you need certainty to act, you'll stay stuck. So instead of asking, will this work? You ask, is this the right direction? Direction is something you can choose even without certainty. Another important part of rebuilding resilience is restoring routines. After setbacks, life often feels chaotic. Routines create stability. They don't solve everything, but they give your nervous system something predictable to hold on to. This doesn't mean rigid schedules. It means simple anchors. Wake time, movement, one focused task, a shutdown ritual. These anchors tell your system we're still functioning. That stability supports emotional recovery. Social comparison is another trap after setbacks. You start looking around and thinking everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck cleaning up a mess. That comparison magnifies pain and shrinks perspective. Most people are dealing with setbacks you can't see. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes struggle to their highlight reel. That's not a fair comparison. Resilience requires narrowing your comparison to one person, you yesterday. Are you learning? Are you moving even slowly? Are you acting with more clarity than before? That's the metric. Another overlooked part of resilience is humor. Not minimizing humor, but perspective humor. Being able to step back and say, this is brutal, but it's also human. Humor creates distance from the pain without denying it. It reminds you that setbacks are part of the shared human experience, not a personal failure. Long-term resilience also involves redefining your relationship with failure. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process. The people you admire most have a long list of setbacks behind them. You just see the finished product. But resilience isn't built by admiring other people's stories. It's built by surviving your own. One of the strongest resilience habits is meaning-making. This doesn't mean pretending the setback was meant to happen. That can feel invalidating. Meaning-making means asking, how can I use this? Use the lesson, use the clarity, use the humility, use the redirection. Some setbacks close doors that were never meant to stay open. Others force you to build skills you would have avoided. Others slow you down long enough to notice something important. You don't rush this meaning. You let it emerge. Another powerful move is helping someone else while you're recovering. Not at the expense of your own healing, but as a reminder that you still have value. Teaching, mentoring, supporting, listening. These acts restore a sense of contribution. Contribution counters helplessness. Now, let's talk about identity after setbacks. A setback can fracture your self-image. You might no longer see yourself the same way. That's painful, but it's also an opportunity. You get to rebuild identity with more realism and depth. Instead of "I succeed easily," it becomes "I adapt." Instead of "I don't fail," it becomes "I recover." That identity is stronger because it's flexible. Flexibility is the core of resilience, and here's the most important truth. Resilience is not built in moments of success. It's built in moments when you choose to continue despite disappointment. Every time you take one step forward after a setback, you reinforce an identity of persistence. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be unstoppable. You just need to be willing to stand back up. Over time, something shifts. Setbacks still hurt, but they don't shake you the same way. You trust yourself to handle them. You trust yourself to recover. That trust is mental resilience. And that's what allows you to keep going, not because the path is easy, but because you know you're capable of navigating it, even when it gets rough.